Okay, good evening everybody. It's Monday night. This is last Monday night class until after Yom Tov, until after Tishrei, and then class is going back to 8 o'clock. So this week, there's a class this Wednesday, but that's, halach and whatever. Okay, the pasuk is Atem Nitzavim Ayem Kulchem. Now the Gemara says that this Parshat Nitzavim is always read right before Rosh Hashanah. The reason why it's read right before Rosh Hashanah, it says simply because last week we read about the curses or the hidden blessings, whatever, and the Gemara said we want to separate between the curses officially, the outwardly curses, and Rosh Hashanah. Just like between the other curses in Parshat B'chukaisei that we read before Shavuos, we also separate with the Parshat Bamidbar, that we don't go straight from the week of curses into Shavuos or into Rosh Hashanah. So we have the break of Atem Nitzavim. Now, because Chazal say that we read Nitzavim always before Rosh Hashanah, as we'll see, when it says Atem Nitzavim Hayim, today you're all standing, today. Now, of course, it was the 7th of Adar when Moshe Rabbeinu passed away. But in the Chazal, it tells us that Hayom, today, the day, refers to the day of Rosh Hashanah. Which means that even though last week the Torah screamed at the Jewish people, you're going to get this punishment, and this punishment, and this punishment. Of course, it's hidden brachas. But outwardly, it looks, pretty strict. So a person can get depressed. Like Rashi brings it down, in fact, that the people can get depressed. Look at all these curses, what was going to happen to us. So Hashem says to them, don't worry. Atem Nitzavim Hayem Kulchem, you're still standing, all here. You're still here. Don't worry about it. And you're standing firm. And if we have time, we'll talk about that. I just want to, if the pasuk itself says like this, you are standing today, all of you, Lifnei Hashem Elokechem, before God, which is a general statement. You, all Jews, are standing before Hashem. And then the pasuk enumerates 10 levels. Roshechem, Shivtechem, Ziknech, the heads, your elders, your policemen, all Yidden, your children, your wives, the converts, the wood choppers, the water carriers, everybody is standing. So it's interesting to note, the Torah starts off by saying, you all, a general statement, as if everybody's equal. And then the Torah says, enumerates 10 different levels, which, as Chassidus explains, can represent every possible type of a Jew. From Roshechem Shivtechem, which represents the heads of the Jewish people, all the way to the wood choppers and water carriers, where significantly they were the lowest members of the Jewish nations in intellect and emotions and greatness and so on. So what is this that you have the general, all Jews are together, and then the Torah enumerates details? Why is there that concept of both? From one side, where it's general, everybody's equal, everybody's together, and then you go into the details where there's 10 distinct levels. So Chassidus explains as follows. The Jewish people are likened to a body. Okay? In essence, it's one body. It's one person. Yet this body is composed of a lot of different parts. You have the head, and the heart, and the hands, and the feet, and the stomach, and the feet, and the toes, and everything else. We find the same thing in another aspect. So you have one body. The body is composed of many different parts. You have one nation, one Jewish nation, composed of many different parts. You have the same thing when it comes to mitzvahs. We before a Jew does a mitzvah, we make a bracha. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvayso v'tzivanu. That God commanded us in His mitzvahs. That's a general statement. That's for all mitzvahs. Then we go into the details. V'tzivanu lahad kner shel Shabbos kodesh, lahaniach tefillin, l'satei b'tzitzis, or whatever the bracha may be. So we find in mitzvahs also this dichotomy, so to speak. From one side, all the mitzvahs have one thing in common. They're the mitzvahs of Hashem. And from the opposite side, we have every mitzvah is different. So we find that by the Jewish nation, we are kolchem, we're all one, divided into different parts. We are all one body, composed of different parts. We have mitzvahs composed of one. All mitzvahs are generally God's mitzvahs, and then we go into the details. And then we have another interesting thing with a Sefer Torah. A Sefer Torah is one Sefer Torah, which means if there's one letter missing anywhere in the Torah, the Yud, which is the smallest of letters, is missing at the end of the Torah, the whole Torah scroll is not kosher. But the question is, it's all the way at the end of the book. Why can't I read the first 4 books? What's the problem? The answer is, it's one Torah. And everybody has to be part of it. And then we find a contradictory law to that. And that is, if 2 letters touch, 2 letters are touching each other, it's also not kosher. And that doesn't make sense, because if you think about it, it's contradictory. You're saying all the letters are one letter. If one letter is missing, the whole Torah scroll is not good. That means the whole Torah is one thing. So what do you care if the letters touch? On the contrary, that shows unity. They're touching each other. So Chassidus explains this is exactly what we need. We need both things. We need Atem Nitzavim Hayem Kulchem. The Jews are all standing together. That's one unit. But then this unit needs components. Heads all the way down to the wood choppers, water carriers. Torah is one component. But this one component is composed of 305,000 letters. 305,000 plus letters. Okay, mitzvahs are all mitzvahs of Hashem, but every mitzvah is different. Now the question is, how is it possible, and the Torah answers it in this pasuk itself, how is it possible that one thing can be composed of so many different things that are opposites with each other? For instance, the mind, the brain is cold. Intellect is cold. The heart, emotions are warm. Okay? The head and the heart are opposites. Yet we say you can't be without a head and you can't live without a heart. But they're opposite things. How is it possible that Atem Nitzavim Hayem Kulchem, how is it possible that so many Jews are standing in unity? There's 10 distinct levels. There's brilliant people and there's the simple folk. How can they be together? And that's what the pasuk says. Atem Nitzavim Hayem Lifnei Hashem Elokecha, because you're all standing before God. How is it that the body has so many different limbs and organs and veins and who knows what, and yet the body functions together? Because nothing in the body feels itself as a separate entity. It's all for one goal. In other words, the whole body realizes there's one goal over here, to be a healthy person. That means I'm not the heart, and I'm not the head, and I'm not the stomach, which are different types of things that contradict each other many times, because I have a goal, and the goal is to stand before Hashem. And if the goal is standing in the presence of Hashem, then all the individuals become one. In other words, a healthy person, we said this, learned this many times, a healthy person doesn't feel his head or a heart or a stomach. If you're healthy, you don't feel your stomach. If you're sick, then you feel your stomach. You have a headache, you feel your head. God forbid you have a heartache, chest pain, then you feel yourself. That's a sign of illness. That's a sign that you're not healthy. Because what is the problem then? All of a sudden, the head that has a headache says, hey, I'm a head. I'm an individual with pain. He's not totally devoted to the cause, so to speak, where there is no me. We learned this many, many times. We said, the only success of any team in sports is when there's no me, it's only us. If a guy playing basketball wants to get all the baskets, or all the points, and he's not going to have teamwork, they'll never win a game. Every player on the team has to feel there's one goal. There's the team. The team has to win. I am just a component of that. There's no me. I'm just part of it. And that's exactly what Hashem is saying, telling the Jews before Rosh Hashanah. Atem nitzavim hayom kulchem. You're all standing together. Lifnei Hashem lakecha. Because you're standing before Hashem, then there's no you. It's kulchem. It's all unity. And yet, every individual has his own unique importance in this team, in this body or in Jewish nation. And that's why what he said, the law by Sefer Torah is one letter is missing, it's no good. Why? Because we're all one. Every Jew, no Jew could be missing. At the same time, two letters cannot touch. In the halacha it's called mukav grill. There has to be parchment, empty space between each letter. Why? Because the whole beauty of Judaism is that there's separation, there's each person's components of every Jew accomplishing the mission that it needs to accomplish. Just like the foot might not be as important as the head and the heart, but the foot is a very important to the human body. You want to get somewhere, you need the foot. So that's the dichotomy over here. From one side, it's Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem. We're all together, yet we're individual. How can you have the individual becoming one if they're all different individuals? Because it's Lifnei Hashem Lakechem. It's all for the common goal of being to do what Hashem wants us to do. And that's why it's another interesting thing. The word Atem, the first word, Aleph Taf Mem, is the same letters as the word Emes. You know how you stand firmly before Hashem? With Emes. What is truth? Hashem Elokim Emes. God is truth. Because God always was, is, and will be. We learned many times, what if you're sometimes not, and sometimes won't be, then even while you're existing, you're not real. We discussed it at great length. So the Torah says like this, Atem, with Emes. Emes means, I'm interested in what needs to be done, rather than what I'm supposed to be doing. No, that's the only way it works. The only way success, even in business. Business, everybody has to do their part. Different parts, but they all have to blend together for one goal to make the company successful. But they have to work, they have separate jobs. You can't have, not that I'm knocking anything. Today they call them custodian engineers. In my days we called them janitors. Okay? They clean the floors, right? So somebody will say, they're not that important. You know what? Without them cleaning the place, you can't function. They're very important. You know what I mean? Everybody's important in their own role. So everybody, the Torah says, Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, you have to stand before Hashem and do it that way. Then the pasuk says in the second pasuk, right after that, La'avracha, why are you standing all today? La'avracha beviris Hashem alakecha, to go through a covenant, in the covenant of Hashem, that God is making a covenant with you. And the Gemara learns out from here, at this point in Jewish history, the Jews became responsible one for another. There's a Gemara that says the expression, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zebazeh, which means they are responsible one for another. Arevim Zebazeh.
But shouldn't that have happened when Pinchas did what he did? Wasn't that the first example?
No. That time, the Gemara says, it's a whole thing in the Gemara. Right before Moshe Rabbeinu died, this pasuk, La'avracha beviris, and a few psukim before that, the Gemara Levakosh Leish B'Yachiv. Now we learn it. By the way, this explains a very interesting concept, that all Jews are responsible one for another. I'll give you an example. Somebody who's not obligated in a mitzvah cannot do it for somebody who's obligated. Okay, I'll give you an example. Rosh Hashanah is coming up, right? Adults have an obligation to hear shofar. Kids are not obligated biblically to do mitzvahs, right? If a kid blows shofar for an adult on Rosh Hashanah, the person did not fulfill the obligation of listening to shofar, because it has to be from somebody who is obligated to do the mitzvah. Okay? That's the halacha. You can't fulfill your obligation from somebody who's not obligated to do the mitzvah. So now there's it's an everyday question, by the way. So the question is, if I heard shofar already, if I already heard shofar, so I'm not obligated anymore. I did it. But I'm not obligated anymore. How could I blow shofar for you if you didn't hear it yet? I'm not responsible anymore. I'm not obligated anymore. So why am I not like a kid who's not obligated? Therefore, how can I blow for you? So halacha says, you're right. The reason why I can blow shofar for you is because I have a responsibility that you hear shofar. My personal obligation, I did. But I have a biblical, because of this Gemara, Kol Yisrael, we're all responsible one for another. That means that every Jew I have an obligation that you hear shofar, you hear shofar, you hear shofar. And therefore that obligation makes me obligated enough that I'm allowed to blow shofar for you. That's because of this Gemara. You heard the Megillah already, you could read it for somebody else. You're not obligated anymore because I have an obligation. Kids don't have that obligation for somebody else. I have an obligation to see that you hear shofar. And therefore I'm allowed to blow shofar for you because it's called my obligation. But there's a very interesting concept over here. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh simply means all Jews are responsible one for another. That means if you're doing something wrong, it's my responsibility to make sure, to straighten it out. So now you have like this. First of all, grammatically, anybody knows a little bit of Hebrew. In Hebrew, when you want to say, I'm responsible one for another, the Hebrew word should be Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lo Zeh, one to another. Ba means in. Kol Yisrael, the Gemara's expression is not Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Lo Zeh. If you look in the Gemara says Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Ba Zeh, in another. Now what does that mean? Because this word Arevim, Arev, okay? Arev in Hebrew means a guarantor. You have Pesach, you have Arev, Kablan. If I give you a loan and I want a guarantor, that guarantor is called Arov. That's Arevim Zebazah. We're responsible, guarantee. We're responsible for one for another. Now that word has another two meanings. Ta'aruves, the word mixture of stuff, in Hebrew ta'aruves, is the same root of the word, orev. So it means guarantor, it means mixed together, and the third definition of the word orev, in the Gemara, it's a pasuk, Keilcha orev, it's sweet, orev means sweet. So these three words, ayin, reish, beis, which means simply Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh, that they're responsible one for another. There's two more meanings to it. One is the Jews are mixed with one another, and that's why it says Zeh Bazeh. We are mixed one in the next, and we're all one big cholent. All the Jewish people are one big kugel, one big cholent. We're one mixture of everybody equal, everybody the same. And then it comes in the word Arev, which means to be sweet. So we're saying Kol Yisrael, what the Gemara will learn out from this parsha. Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh Bazeh means all three things. We are responsible one to another. Why am I responsible for you? I'm me and you're you. Why am I responsible for you? And why are you responsible for me? Because If you're lacking, I'm lacking. Because we're all mixed. If you're all mixed, okay, one part of the body that's lacking, the whole body is lacking. You can't say because the foot hurts, it doesn't affect the head or the stomach. It affects the whole body. This is the foot. What is because it's all mixed together. Again, like we spoke before, it's one big happy family. So therefore, you have this concept of Kol Yisrael Arevim Zeh B'zeh. We're all intermingled, intermixed. Therefore, if you're incomplete, I am incomplete, and therefore I have an obligation to make sure that you do it. And therefore, that is the sweetness of the Jewish people, that we're all responsible in one with another. Like we learned many times, you can have musical instruments. You can have a violin, let's say, is a beautiful instrument. 100 violins will not create a beautiful symphony. It won't. One color will not create beautiful art. What creates beautiful symphony, beautiful art, beautiful nation? When there's so many different colors blending together in harmony, even though the colors contrast each other, black and white or whatever it is, instruments that normally contrast against each other, yet they blend together, again, for one purpose, to make a beautiful symphony, is like the body. The whole body with different components blend together in harmony to be able to create a healthy body, a beautiful body. That's the greatness of the Jewish people. And this is what's happening now. There's the covenant that all Jews are responsible one for another. And it's a remarkable concept, by the way. Okay, then you have another, just to go in order of Sukkim. Again, the first pasuk, Atem Nitzavim Hayom Kulchem, means you're standing. Now in Hebrew, the word for standing is really omdim. Omdim means to stand. What's this expression, nitzav? So the Medrash says, nitzav is not standing. Nitzav melech means the standing of a king. The standing of a king, which means standing firmly today. It's not regular standing, the Jews are standing today. The Torah is teaching us the Jews are standing firmly today. What does that mean in a practical sense? We are, as the pasuk says, we are Mamleches Kohanim v'Goy Kodesh. We are a nation of kings, of Kohanim, a holy nation. We are kings. The Gemara says an expression, Amar Malka, if a king says, Akar Tura, uproot a mountain, the mountain becomes uprooted. A king is powerful. A king says something, it happens. What does that mean for us as Jews? Amar Malka Akar Tura means, when it comes to a king, nothing gets in his way. Whatever he wants, he gets. He wants to uproot a mountain, they'll uproot a mountain. What does it mean for a Jew? The Torah says you are standing firmly today, powerfully today. What does that mean?
You're a king.
That any we're kings, Mamlechas Kohanim, which means any challenge in life, any difficulty in life, any difficulty when it comes to Torah mitzvahs, the Torah says there is absolutely nothing that really can block you from doing it. There might be a lot of blockages, there might be a lot of mountains in the way, but if the king says get rid of the mountain, you get rid of the mountain. That's the power of a king. The Torah said needs of standing like a king means the Torah is teaching us when it comes to Kulchem, when it comes to the Jewish nation, and we stand firmly together, there is nothing in the world that can stop a Jew from doing what he needs to do. And they give a famous example of this. You can have a little, one straw. Okay? Not the straw you drink from. The straw, right, that grows, right? Hay. You can have one straw. It's very easy to break. You have a bundle of straw. It's impossible to break. There's no way in the world you can break it. Either one individual straw is very easy to break. Why should so many together be hard and impossible? That's the power of unity. The Torah says, "Atem nitzavim hayim kulchem." When Jews stand firmly together with unity, whether kulchem, there's many different details. Yeah, the heads and this and that, 100%. But when you stand together firmly in the presence of God, so now you're going with God's power, there's nothing in the world that can stand in the way. Any challenge in life, any challenge in Yiddishkeit, any challenge whatsoever, the Jew can overcome the challenges. It's a very important concept. The truth is, the reality is, the only thing that blocks us from doing what we need to do is ourselves. It's our mental thinking that we can't do it. Because Torah says, you could do it. God tells you to do it, that means you can do it. He's giving you the power to do it, so do it. Okay, now, there's in Perek Lamed, Pasuk Vav, chapter 30, Pasuk Vav. Yeah. The Torah says like this. This Pasuk is connected, interestingly, to Elul also. The Pasuk says, okay, you're going to do teshuva and so on and so forth. Umal Hashem Elokecha, and God will circumcise your heart. That's levav zarecha, and the heart of your children. La'ava, that you should be able to love God with all your heart and your soul. Leman chayecha. Okay? You're basically your whole life. Okay? That's for your life. So Torah is saying over here, Hashem is going to circumcise your heart. Now normally, we don't circumcise the heart. It's a different part of the body we circumcise. But here, by the way, it says in Sfarim that this pasuk represents Elul, because Es Levavcha, Ve'es Levav, the acronym is Aleph Lamed Vav Lamed, which is Elul, which is the concept of teshuva. There's another pasuk that says, Umaltem, not in this pasuk, but there's another pasuk in Chumash that says, Umaltem es orlas levavchem. You should circumcise the foreskin of your heart. Here also it says Hashem is going to circumcise the heart. What does it mean Hashem is circumcising the heart? I mean, there's no foreskin on the heart. So it says like this. There's, by nature, it says by nature, intellect, the mind, if we have time, I don't think we'll get there later, but there's another aspect in the Parsha like this also. There's, the mind controls the heart. The mind stimulates the heart. If you think into something, how great it is, you will cause a love to it or a fear to it and awe of it and so on. That's equivalent. It's very quickly. The Magid, Mezritcha Magid asks the question, there's a mitzvah in the Torah, V'ahavtas Hashem Elokecha, to love God. There's a mitzvah in the Torah to love God. Now, I can command you to do or not to do. How can I command you a feeling? I can say, eat broccoli, you hate it, but I can command you eat it anyway. Or you like something, I can say, don't eat it. But a feeling, does somebody turn on a button, a love button that's going to go turn it on? It's a feeling of the heart. If I don't like you, I don't like you. What are I'm going to tell you? To say I love you, it's a lie. So the Maggid explains, the mitzvah of Yahavta doesn't mean it's a mitzvah you should love God. The Maggid says, it's a continuation of the pasuk, Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, which is meditating into the greatness of Hashem. That you could do. That's a mitzvah. You could think. You could meditate. And then the Maggid says, V'yahavta means you will love, not you should love. If you meditate into Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, then V'yahavta, Maggid says you will. Why? Because the nature of a person, the midas, the feelings, the emotions are based on the intellect. Kids like little things, adults like bigger things. Okay? So emotions are controlled by intellect. What happens though if somebody meditates into the greatness of Hashem, but the heart doesn't get turned on? What's causing the heart not to get turned on? So Chassidus and Muslim also say the same thing. You know what is interesting? There's, in Yiddish, it's called verstoppt. Verstoppt means a blocked heart. In other words, the intellect is trying to come down to improve the feelings, stimulate the feelings, but there's a blockage. There's a blockage that's not letting the intellect stimulate the heart. It's like you can have a heart of stone, okay? You pour water on it, it's just bouncing off. There's nothing permeating because it's... that heart, that's called the orla, the foreskin of the heart. That foreskin is, so to speak, it's not a foreskin like on a bris, but it's the blockage of the heart that doesn't allow the intellectual stimulation to influence the emotions of the person. He's still cold. He could be brilliant, meditate all about godliness, and he still has no feelings whatsoever. Why? Because the heart is covered. Okay? That could be undone in two ways. Here the pasuk says, "Umal Hashem alokechas levavcha." God will circumcise your heart. That means God will help you when you, like it says, if you're really trying to serve Hashem, then Hashem is going to help you do it. Another pasuk says, "Umalta mesarlas," you have to do it. In other words, it's a joint effort between the Jew and Hashem. The Jew tries to do it, and God helps him doing it. So that's what the pasuk is saying over here. Umal Hashem alakachas levavcha. You have to have a gift from above, so to speak, a gift from Hashem to be able to do it. But the ultimate goal is to get rid of the heart blockage. And sometimes it's a mental blockage too. I try to go, it doesn't work. That's a mental blockage. And there's a blockage of the heart. And Hashem tells the Jew, you got to do it. I will help you do it, but you have to do it. It works both ways. The Jew does it and Hashem does it. Okay, another thing is like this. Okay. Now in the same parsha, Pasuk Beis, chapter 30, sentence 2. This is also another, just in Hebrew, it's very funny. When Torah uses strange expressions in Hebrew that are grammatically incorrect, but when you understand it, the Torah is in one word, like we said before, zeh bazeh. It's not responsible one to another. We are all mixed together. We're all mixed. We're one unit. When you do teshuva, okay, let's speak in English. When you do teshuva, you're returning what? To God. Right? You return to God. You don't return until God. It's just incorrect. You don't return until God. You return to God. Okay? Now, if you look in chapter 30, Pasuk Beis, Pasuk 2, it says, V'shafta, you should return, ad Hashem Elokecha, until God. It doesn't say, it should say, V'shafta le Hashem Elokecha, return to God. Instead of the Pasuk saying, return to God, the Pasuk is saying, return until God. I mean, what type of teshuva is that? I mean, what does that mean? So Chassidus has a lot on this, but very briefly, the few points about it. And also, what's this double expression, Hashem Elokecha? V'shafta ad Hashem, or la Hashem. The pasuk grammatically should have said, V'shafta, you should do teshuva, return, le Hashem. That's it. What do you mean Hashem Elokecha? God, your God. It's understood. What do you mean V'shafta ad Hashem Elokecha? We find a similar pasuk, by the way, in the Haftarah Shabbos Shuvah, the Shabbos to be between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. The Haftarah also starts off, Shuvah Yisrael ad Hashem Elokecha. Again, Shuvah Yisrael ad until Hashem Elokecha. Again, it should say to Hashem, not until. So explanation is like this. It's telling you what is the teshuva. You know what teshuva you have to do? Until Hashem becomes Elokecha. And I'll explain what that means. But the point is, the Torah is saying, B'shafta, you have to return. Ad, to such an extent, until Hashem becomes Elokecha. Now what does that mean? Hashem has different names, right? That we know. Okay, so in Kabbalah it's Gemara, it's Medrash. There's 7 names that Hashem has, representing different aspects of Hashem. Okay? The purpose of a name is to be identified with somebody else. You yourself don't need a name. If you'd be the only one around, you don't need a name. What do you need a name? Somebody wants to call you. Somebody wants to talk about you. So that you need a name to identify the person. So the concept of a name is the way you interact with others. The way you interact is they need to know your name, who you are, what you are, and so on like that. If you're all alone in the world, you don't need a name. Hashem has 7 names because Hashem corresponding with the 7 midos, the 7 emotional attributes, chesed, word, tiferes. Okay, these are the 7 names of Hashem. So there's Elokim, there's Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, right? The essential name of Hashem, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. There's the name Elokim, like we say, Hashem Elokeinu, or Hashem Elokim. The word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, which is the essential name of Hashem, there's really 2 Hashem. Hashem Korachim V'Chanun, that we're saying these days a lot in Slichas. Hashem. There's Hashem, which is one of the 7 names, and then there's the essential name of Hashem, which is higher than all the other names, and that's also Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. The word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, what is the definition of the word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei? Yud-Kei Vav-Kei means Mahava, creator. That's what the word Yud-Kei Vav-Kei means. Creator. Creator by definition means it's above creation, therefore it could create. You can't create if you're in creation. If you're limited in creation, you can't create. Creating means I'm above it and I'm creating it. Now, not only that, the name Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, if you play around Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey, if you play around with the letters, okay, you have Haya, Hoveh, and Yihiyah. In that one word, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei. Past, Haya is past, Hoveh is present, and Yihiyah is future, which means in the name of Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, you have the past, present, and future simultaneously in one word. So therefore, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei represents the supernatural revelations of godliness. Elokim is the name God used to create the world. Bereshis bara Elokim, Vayomer Elokim, Vayomer Elokim. That represents nature. We learned in the past Elokim equals numerically 86. Aleph Lamed Hey Yud Mem equals 86. The same numerical value as the word HaTeva, the nature. That means that's the natural name of Hashem. Why is the nature called Teva? In Hebrew, Teva means nature. Because we say in davening every day, Oz Yosher, we say, Tub'u b'yam suf, sunken in the sea. Teva is called nature in Hebrew. Why is nature in Hebrew called Teva? Because godliness is sunken in that you don't see godliness. You look at nature, okay? Nature is one massive miracle, okay? But people don't look at it as a miracle. The sun comes up in the east, sets in the west. People call it Mother Nature. A baby is born is an unbelievable miracle. We call it nature. You take a seed in the ground, it rots, it germinates, and out comes a tree. It's not. Think about it, it's a miracle. If one day the sun will come up in the west and set in the east, it's going to freak out. I mean, the world will go crazy. All you did is putting in a reverse, big deal. Elokim represents the nature of the Jew, where God is concealed. Yud Kei Vav Kei represents the revelation of godliness, where godliness is revealed, supernatural. The Torah says like this, you want to know what the level of teshuva really means? It's not only for sins. The Zohar says that one of the main functions of Mashiach, when Mashiach comes, is la'asava tzadikaya b'tiyufta, that tzadikim are going to do teshuva. Now tzadikim don't sin. What does it mean that tzadikim are going to do teshuva? Teshuva doesn't mean sins. Teshuva means to return. That's what teshuva means. If you sinned, you tore yourself away from Hashem, so now you have to return. Okay. But what happens if you didn't tear yourself away from Hashem? You still have to do teshuva. You still have to return to a higher level. God's infinite. As great as a level that you are, or we are, it's nothing compared to the real level of Hashem. So therefore, what do we need? To return to a level of godliness. But here the Pasuk and the Torah of Shabbat Shuvah, the Pasuk is telling us a much deeper concept. It's not return to Hashem. The Pasuk is saying, V'shavta, you have to return to Hashem. Until that the Hashem, the supernatural, Elokecha, becomes your nature. That's what Torah teshuva is really all about. Not for sins. The Torah says, you sinned, or you didn't sin, whatever. Because it says in Chassidus the expression, you could be the greatest tzaddik, but compared to what God is, it's all like a sin. Because it's nothing compared to what it should be, based on God's greatness and holiness. So what is the Aveda of teshuva? The Aveda of teshuva means you return, you get close to God to such an extent that the supernatural level of God becomes your nature. It becomes your nature. That means you realize in your nature that it's really all supernatural. The Rebbe Marash, the fourth Rebbe, said that Parnasa, making a living today, in his time, this was 3 generations ago, right? Parnasa is like the man from heaven. Totally irrational, doesn't make sense. People think they're making the best of deals and they lose everything. And they do stupid things and they make a mint. I mean, whatever. Parnasa bizman hazeh, the Rebbe Marash said, Parnasa today is mamish from God. A Jew realizes, I have to make a vessel. Okay, the pasuk says in the Beirachacha Hashem Elokecha b'chol asher taseh. God will bless you in what you do. Okay, Parnasa comes from Hashem. Like we said many times, you're not going to get a cent more than what God says, and you're not going to get a cent less. So why you could just lay in bed and we're going to get what God, The answer is no. We need to make a vessel. The Torah says, "Ubeirachacha Hashem Elokecha." God will bless you. B'chol asher ta'aseh. You got to do it. They tell a story. A chassid once came to the Tzemach Tzedek and asked for a bracha, for parnasa. And the bracha didn't work. Okay? And he came back. He said, Rebbe, it didn't work. So the Tzemach Tzedek said to him the following. For a farmer, the biggest blessing is rain. For a farmer, the biggest blessing is rain. But rain is only a blessing if you planted and cultivated the field. If you didn't make a vessel, if you laid in bed and Hashem made it rain, nothing's going to grow. The bracha doesn't have a vessel to keep it. He said to him, did you make... It's like the famous story. A guy came to his Rebbe, asked for a bracha to win the lottery. He didn't win. So he came back to his Rebbe. So the Rebbe said to him, did you buy a ticket? He said, no. Oh, come on. How do you expect to win the lottery if you didn't buy a ticket? You have to make a vessel. So the pasuk says, a Jew needs to make a vessel. But the pasuk says over here, what is the level of tshuva? When does a person reach the ultimate level of tshuva? How much should you be returning? Until you realize that Hashem Elokecha, that your nature is really supernatural. Everything you do in your nature is not you, it's not your nature, it's God. We're just making the vessel for it. And this explains another strange pasuk also. We say it 3 times a day in davening at least. We say Hashem, and we finish Yom Kippur with this. Hashem Hu Elokim. To know today, put to your heart, the God is Hashem Elokim Hashemaim, and then we say Ki Hashem Hu Elokim. God is God, but Shemaim Mimal, the heaven above, or borders mitachas. Okay, and the earth below. What do you mean God is God? Of course God is God. What do you mean Hashem Hu Elokim? God simply is, Hashem is Elokim, meaning God is God. I mean, yeah, what is he? Not God. What do you mean Hashem Hu Elokim? And at the end of Yom Kippur, we scream it out 7 times. Hashem Hu Elokim, first the Chazan, then the people repeat Hashem Hu Elokim. At the climax of Yom Kippur. What does that mean? Again, the same concept. It doesn't mean Hashem Hu Elokim, God is God. We're screaming, realize that Hashem, the supernatural level of godliness, Hu Elokim, that is your nature. The Jew's nature is supernatural. According to every law of nature, the Jewish nation should not be existing today, period. Throughout the years that everybody wanted to destroy us, we're still here, and the Romans and the Greeks are not here. It's totally supernatural. A Jew has to know Hashem Hu Elokim means your supernatural is your nature, and your nature is your supernatural. And that's what the level of tshuva means. V'shafta, you have to return ad, not to. The Torah is not telling you, the Torah is telling us what the level of tshuva is. You have to return to Hashem ad until you realize that Hashem Elokecha, that your nature is really supernatural. That's exactly what it means. Okay, now, we have a few minutes left. Okay, later on in the Parsha, in Parak Lamed again, Pasik, well, the final part we're going to talk about is 14. Okay? Moshe Rabbeinu is gathering the children again before he's passing away, and he's telling the Jews, this mitzvah I'm commanding you today, it's not wondrous, it's not far, it's not in the heavens, to say we should go up to the heavens and get it, it's not overseas. And then he says like this, Ki korev elecha hadavar ma'id, it's very close, Hashem says. Moshe Rabbeinu speaking to Hashem. Hashem speaking through Moshe. Ki korev elecha, it's very close to you. Hadavar, the thing, ma'id, very close. Not only, like Rashi says, the Torah that I gave you is close to you, ma'id, extremely close. Beficha, in your mouth, belvavcha, in your heart, la'aseisi, to do. Which basically, if you just translate it, means thought, speech, and action. Your mouth is speech, belvavcha is your heart, which means thought, and la'aseisi is action. So Hashem is telling us, Torah and mitzvahs are extremely close for every single Jew. And not only close, it's very close. In your heart and mind and soul. Meaning thought, speech, and action. The whole Tanya is based on this pasuk. The first part of Tanya, in the pre-introduction, is called the Sharblat. In the introduction of the introduction, the Alter Rebbe says, what am I writing this book about? It's based, this is what he writes there. Because I got an English Tanya doing it. Before the introduction even. It's based on the pasuk, he writes, Ki davar, ki karev elacha, davar ma'ayid b'ficha v'achal ha'seisai. The whole book of Tanya, the first part of Tanya, 53 chapters. He's saying, I'm telling you, the book is to show how it's close and easy for a person to come to serve Hashem in thought, speech, and action. And then he adds in a long, short way. But that's not for now, that's for a different time. But what does it mean? The whole Tanya is based on Kari V'elacha Davar Me'ed is very close and easy. Because if you stop to think for a second, let's keep one thing in mind. Thought, speech, and action. That means the Torah says, and Torah says it's true, it's very close, extremely close, to serve God in thought, speech, and action. Which means no foreign thoughts, no foreign words, no foreign actions. Okay? We'll see how much we get into this now. Stop a guy walking in the street. Okay, today everybody's talking to themselves. Whatever. I mean, in my day, when we grew up, if you walked in the street talking to yourself, we were crazy. Right? Thought you belonged in a mental institution. Now everybody's talking to themselves. Right? And meanwhile, they talk so loud you hear it a block away.
Or they're writing letters to themselves.
So, ask a person walking in the street, any day, just walking. Say to them, can you tell me everything you thought in the last 10 minutes? There's no way to be able to do it. Their mind is all over the place. Okay? Mind wanders. Okay? There were great Chassidim, I don't know what it means, they were able to give a reckoning of every thought, speech, and action they had since Bar Mitzvah. Wow. We can't even give a reckoning for 10 minutes, okay, of our thoughts. The mind is going all over the place. How is it possible? The Torah says, and Levavcha again means in your thought, speech, and action. How is it possible, Dr. Rebbe says, how is it possible, he's asking the question like, how is it possible that Torah and mitzvahs in thought, speech, and action is so close? Even action is hard. Speech is hard. Thought for sure is hard. How is it possible? So in a nutshell, what the Alter Rebbe explains in the first 53 chapters of Tanya, explains first the longer way, then a shorter way. The key to it all is the mind controls the heart. A person, by definition of a human being, just by the definition of being a human being means you can control your life completely. Just because I want to do it doesn't mean I have to do it, or because I don't want to do it doesn't mean I don't have to do it. The mind controls the heart. To use the Alter Rebbe's language, moach shalit al halev. The mind controls the heart. If I know it's wrong, I have the ability to not to do it. Or if I know it's right, I have the ability to do it even though I don't want to do it. I hate it. I don't want to do it. The Pasuk is saying, again, if you think about it, Torah is emes. Moshe Rabbeinu is telling the Jewish people in the name of Hashem, Torah and mitzvahs are not only close, they're extremely close for you to keep Torah and mitzvahs in thought, speech, and action. Why? Because if you understand what's right and what's wrong, there's no way in the world as a human being that you cannot control your heart and mind. If you understand what's right, you can do it in a 100% way. Now somebody will ask, how can I control my foreign thoughts or evil thoughts? How can I control them? They're coming into my head. So the Alter Rebbe says, by the way, even a Beinoni who doesn't sin, that doesn't mean foreign thoughts don't fall into his head. That, if you have an animal soul, that's going to happen. The question is, what do you do when those thoughts come in? A negative thought comes in. Do you invite it in for tea and coffee? Or do you get rid of it? Now, how can I get rid of a negative thought? It's very simple. By thinking a good thought. If I have a negative, I'm going to use evil, foreign, whatever you want to call it, a negative thought. Okay, if I have a negative thought coming into me, I don't have to entertain it. I can get rid of it by thinking a good thought. And it's going to come in again, and again I can get rid of it. So the truth is, a person does have the ability to control their thoughts if they want to. And the Torah says it's easy. Why is it easy? Because you have a mind. First of all, he says you have a neshama, which is part of God. This neshama has an intellect to it and emotions to it. So you have godly intellect, okay, of your godly soul. The godly soul can control the animal soul, because the animal soul primarily animal, which is emotions. The godly soul is primarily intellect, so it's the mind. The mind controls the heart. If I'm aware that I'm doing something wrong, right, my mind can say, I'm not doing it. The foreign thought, the negative thought comes into the mind, I get rid of it immediately. And that's, the Torah says, it's very close to do. If you want to, as a human being, doesn't mean it's easy. The Torah is not saying it's easy. The Torah says it's close for you to do. The Torah is not saying it's easy to do. It says it's close to do. That means it's up to you. If you want, you got it. Just pick it up, and it's close to you. You got it. That's what this pasuk is saying. And not only that, it's coming in a way of beficha, bevavcha, in your heart, in your mind, and so there's no way a person cannot do that. And just to finish off, there's a thing the Rebbe brings on the second Rebbe, the middle Rebbe said, when two Jews meet, it's two godly souls against one animal soul. When two Jews meet, it's two godly souls against one animal soul. So the question is, 1 minute, why isn't it 2 against 2? We all both have a godly soul and animal soul. So one of the explanations of this is very profound. And that is, my godly soul and your godly soul want the same thing. My animal soul and your animal soul are different. I might like this and you might like this. Right? Every person's Yetzer Hara is different. Nobody has the same Yetzer Hara. Some people have Yetzer Hara for A and B and C and D, whatever. So when two Jews meet, both godly souls are ganging up together against each one's individual animal soul. Because this is joint and this is separate. So when two Jews meet, it's two godly souls tackling each one of our animal souls separately. So it's 2 against 1. Anyway, okay, we're going to leave it here. Mitzvah Shem, the next Monday class is after Sukkot at 8 o'clock. And this Wednesday night will be a class. Until then, everybody have a great week. We should only hear good news and everything should be great.